Hi guys, today we are going to find out what if Obama never became president. You're standing in a packed Democratic convention hall in Denver, August 2008, watching history unfold differently. The crowd roars as Hillary Clinton's name echoes through the arena, securing the nomination she fought so hard for. You feel the electricity in the air as delegates who might have supported a young senator from Illinois instead rally behind the former First Lady. The primary battle was brutal. Clinton's experience versus change, establishment versus outsider, but experience won. You probably won't survive the political whiplash of seeing how dramatically one different outcome reshapes everything you thought you knew about recent history. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where this alternate journey takes us around the globe. Now, sit back and let's dive into today's alternate journey together. You watch as Clinton pivots toward the general election, her campaign machine already targeting John McCain's weaknesses. The Obama phenomenon, that grassroots movement of hope and change, simply never materialized in this timeline. Instead, you see Clinton's methodical, policy-heavy approach dominating Democratic messaging as November approaches. You witness Clinton's inauguration on January 20th, 2009, as the first female president in American history. The financial crisis grips the nation just as tightly, but Clinton's response differs dramatically from what Obama might have done. You watch as her administration immediately signals a more Wall Street-friendly approach to the banking bailouts. Clinton's deep ties to financial institutions shape her team's composition. You see familiar faces from her husband's era returning. The stimulus package she pushes through Congress emphasizes infrastructure over social programs, reflecting her pragmatic governing style. You observe how her relationship with Republicans remains more transactional than transformational, built on decades of Senate relationships. The auto industry bailout proceeds similarly, but Clinton's messaging focuses on American manufacturing strength rather than hope and change. You notice how her administration's economic team includes more centrist Democrats and fewer progressive voices. The housing crisis response leans heavily toward helping banks rather than distressed homeowners directly. Union leaders find themselves with mixed feelings, grateful for manufacturing support but concerned about financial sector favoritism. You see how Clinton's poll numbers remain steady but uninspiring during these crucial early months. The economic recovery begins slowly, following traditional Democratic playbook rather than bold experimentation. You watch President Clinton tackle healthcare reform with the confidence of someone who's been here before. Her approach builds directly on her 1990s experience, but this time, she holds the ultimate power. The legislation she proposes looks more incremental than the sweeping changes Obama might have attempted. You see how Clinton works within existing insurance frameworks rather than challenging the entire system. Republican opposition mobilizes quickly, but their attacks focus on Clinton fatigue rather than socialist fear-mongering. The insurance industry finds itself in familiar territory, negotiating with someone who understands their language. You observe how Clinton's bill includes stronger cost controls but fewer coverage expansions than Obama's version would have. Progressive Democrats grumble about compromises made before negotiations even begin with Republicans. The public option survives longer in Clinton's version, given her willingness to fight insurance companies directly. You witness intense lobbying battles where Clinton's team demonstrates superior tactical knowledge of Washington's machinery. Town halls across America erupt with protests, but the anger feels different. More about Clinton personally than policy specifics. The final bill that emerges covers fewer people but includes stricter regulations on insurance practices and pricing. You witness the Tea Party movement struggling to find its identity without Obama as their primary target. The grassroots anger still exists, economic anxiety, government overreach concerns, but lacks a unifying figurehead to oppose. Clinton represents establishment politics, but she doesn't trigger the same visceral, racially tinged reactions that Obama might have. You see how Tea Party rallies focus more on general anti-government sentiment rather than personal demonization. The movement's messaging becomes scattered across multiple grievances without a single, clear enemy to rally against. Conservative media finds itself recycling Clinton's scandals from the 1990s rather than developing fresh outrage narratives. You observe how this diffused anger actually makes the movement less politically effective in the short term. Republican politicians struggle to harness Tea Party energy when it lacks the focused intensity Obama's presence created. The 2010 midterm elections still swing Republican, but the margins are smaller without Obama-driven turnout. You notice how conservative fundraising operates differently. Less small donor enthusiasm, more traditional big money sources. Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh adapt their messaging to focus on Clinton's Wall Street connections rather than socialist fears. The movement eventually coalesces around fiscal conservatism and constitutional originalism, but takes longer to organize effectively. You watch President Clinton navigate foreign policy with a markedly more hawkish approach than Obama would have taken. Her State Department experience and global relationships immediately reshape America's international posture and diplomatic strategies. The Syrian civil war unfolds differently as Clinton authorizes earlier military intervention against Assad's regime. You observe American forces establishing no-fly zones and safe corridors that Obama historically resisted implementing. Libya sees even more aggressive action. Clinton's team treats Gaddafi's removal as unfinished business from her Senate years. Russian relations deteriorate faster under Clinton, as Putin views her as a more predictable adversarial opponent. You witness Clinton greenlighting arms shipments to Ukrainian forces years before the crisis escalates dramatically. The Iran nuclear negotiations take a harder line, with Clinton demanding more intrusive inspections and oversight. China policy becomes more confrontational regarding trade practices, and South China Sea territorial disputes immediately. You see how Clinton's approach to NATO expansion proceeds more aggressively, particularly regarding Eastern European membership. Military spending increases beyond even Republican requests as Clinton builds bipartisan support for defense modernization. European allies find themselves dealing with an American president more willing to use force diplomatically. You witness Clinton facing her first Supreme Court vacancy when Justice David Souter retires in 2009. Her nominee reflects a more centrist judicial philosophy than Obama's picks would have demonstrated historically. You observe Clinton selecting a candidate with extensive prosecutorial experience and business law background. Republican senators find themselves in familiar territory, opposing Clinton nominees but with less apocalyptic rhetoric. The confirmation hearings focus on legal qualifications rather than ideological warfare that might have surrounded Obama's choices. You see how Clinton's second appointment opportunity arrives when Justice John Paul Stevens steps down. This nomination proves more controversial as Clinton chooses someone with stronger ties to financial regulation. Progressive groups express frustration with Clinton's moderate judicial selections, preferring more liberal firebrands. You watch as these appointments shift the court's center of gravity slightly right compared to Obama's timeline. Conservative legal organizations mount opposition but struggle to generate grassroots energy against Clinton's qualified nominees. The confirmation votes proceed along predictable party lines with minimal drama or national attention. You observe how these judicial choices will influence decades of decisions on corporate power and regulatory authority. You watch the 2012 election unfold, with Clinton facing Mitt Romney in a campaign of familiar faces. The Republican primary plays out similarly, but Romney's message focuses on Clinton fatigue rather than Obama's policies. You observe how Romney emphasizes his business experience against Clinton's government career spanning 3 decades. The healthcare debate centers on Clinton's incremental reforms versus Romney's market-based solutions and state flexibility. You see foreign policy becoming a major campaign issue, with Romney attacking Clinton's interventionist record. Libya and Syria dominate foreign policy discussions in ways they never would have in Obama's re-election. The economy shows steady but unspectacular growth, giving neither candidate a decisive advantage on jobs. You witness Clinton defending her Wall Street relationships while Romney struggles with his private equity background. Women voters remain strongly in Clinton's corner, but the historic gender ceiling has already been broken. Republican turnout lacks the anti-Obama intensity, while Democratic enthusiasm feels more dutiful than inspirational. You observe how third-party candidates gain more traction in this less polarized electoral environment. Clinton wins re-election with a smaller popular vote margin but comfortable electoral college victory. You witness social progress moving at a different pace without Obama's unique cultural influence and symbolic power. LGBTQ+ rights advance more slowly as Clinton takes calculated political positions rather than bold moral stands. The Defense of Marriage Act repeal happens later, with Clinton waiting for safer political timing. You observe how marriage equality proceeds state by state without strong federal leadership pushing the national conversation. Criminal justice reform lacks the personal urgency that Obama's background might have brought to discussions. The Black Lives Matter movement emerges but finds less sympathetic hearing in Clinton's more law and order administration. You see how police reform initiatives focus on training and equipment rather than systemic accountability measures. Immigration policy remains more enforcement-heavy, with Clinton maintaining tougher border security to shore up moderate support. Climate change action proceeds through traditional Democratic channels without Obama's inspirational messaging about generational responsibility. You witness cultural conversations about race moving more slowly, without a black president navigating these discussions. The Supreme Court's social rulings reflect Clinton's more centrist judicial appointments, creating narrower, progressive victories. Youth engagement in politics remains lower without Obama's grassroots mobilization model inspiring a generation of activists. You observe Donald Trump's political trajectory taking a completely different path without Obama to serve as his primary foil. Trump's birther conspiracy theories never gained traction since they were specifically designed to delegitimize Obama's presidency. You see how Trump's 2012 flirtation with running focuses on attacking Clinton's foreign policy interventions rather than Obama's policies. The Apprentice host's political commentary targets Clinton's Wall Street connections and establishment insider status instead. You witness Trump's frustration as his anti-establishment message resonates less against someone who already faced decades of scrutiny. Conservative media gives Trump less platform time since Clinton generates less visceral audience reaction than Obama did. The economic anxiety that fueled Trump's eventual rise gets partially addressed by Clinton's manufacturing focus and infrastructure spending. You observe how Trump's racist appeals find less fertile ground without the racial subtext of opposing America's first black president. Social media algorithms don't amplify Trump's message as effectively since Clinton controversies feel more familiar and less explosive. You see Trump turning more toward business ventures and celebrity pursuits rather than sustained political engagement. The Republican Party establishment maintains more control over their primary process without Trump's anti-Obama energy mobilizing outsider candidates. By 2015, Trump remains a political commentator rather than a serious presidential contender in this timeline. You survey America in 2016 after 8 years of Clinton leadership, examining a nation shaped by pragmatic governance. The economy has recovered steadily, but without the inspirational rhetoric that might have accompanied Obama's version of change. You see a country that feels more politically stable, but less emotionally engaged with its leadership. Healthcare coverage has expanded modestly, though millions more remain uninsured compared to Obama's more ambitious reforms. Foreign interventions in Syria and Libya have created different regional dynamics, with mixed humanitarian and strategic results. You observe how America's international reputation reflects Clinton's more traditional approach to power projection and diplomacy. Social progress has advanced incrementally, following established democratic patterns rather than breakthrough cultural moments. The Supreme Court sits slightly more conservative, affecting decades of future rulings on corporate regulation and social issues. You witness a political landscape where Trump never emerged as a dominant force, leaving Republican opposition more fractured. Climate change action proceeded through conventional policy channels without the urgency Obama might have brought to generational messaging. The national conversation about race and identity evolved more slowly without the symbolic power of a black president. You stand at the threshold of 2016, wondering how Hillary Clinton's second term might have shaped America's path forward. As you step back from this alternate timeline, the magnitude of individual influence on historical trajectories becomes starkly apparent. Clinton's presidency delivered competent governance and incremental progress, but lacked the transformational energy that defined Obama's actual tenure. The absence of Obama's cultural impact rippled through every aspect of American society, from social movements to conservative opposition strategies. You realize that leadership styles don't just implement policy, they shape the emotional and spiritual character of entire eras. Foreign policy became more interventionist, domestic progress more cautious, and political discourse more conventionally partisan under Clinton's steady hand. The butterfly effect of one primary election altered everything from Supreme Court composition to the trajectory of social justice movements. Perhaps most significantly, Trump's political rise never materialized, leaving American populism to find different expressions and different leaders. This alternate America of 2016 stands more stable but less inspired, more experienced but less hopeful than the timeline we actually lived. History reminds us that individual leaders don't just respond to their times, they fundamentally reshape the possibilities their societies can imagine. What fascinates you most about this alternate timeline? Would America have been better or worse off with Clinton's pragmatic approach instead of Obama's transformational vision?